Mendicant Bias is an intelligent Foreigner AI, and he has been hinted at since Halo 2 and potentially has altered the entire Halo universe and directly altered Master Chief's journey in some interesting and bizarre ways that you may find shocking, and holds knowledge about not only the Foreigners but the Flood and much more. There's no better time for his true introduction than in Halo 6, faced with the challenge of taking down evil Cortana and finding atonement for his sins. Let me tell you why I think this is very possible, who Mendicant Bias is, what he can do to fight Cortana, and how the story may play out in Halo 6 and much more. Let's go ahead and get into it. This is going to be a good one, guys. If you haven't already, then be sure to subscribe here on HaloFollower for plenty more videos just like this one, and if you're already a subscriber, then you're awesome. Be sure to hit that bell notification to become a part of the notification squad. We're also giving away an Astro A50 Chief wireless headset, and that's one of the ways of participating in our giveaway. We already know, or led to believe by the endings of Halo 5 Guardians and Halo Wars 2, Cortana has gone rampant and is interested in the Halo rings for whatever reason, has de-armed colonies around the galaxy, and the Flood have been released from High Charity upon the Ark, posing a big threat to not only the Banished but also a galactic Flood invasion. These all pose serious problems, and some of us are left wondering, how the hell will this be resolved? Even the Infinity had to retreat when faced with a Guardian. But an ancient Foreigner AI may be the key to saving everybody. So will an ancient Foreigner in Celia defeat Cortana? And how would he? Will he even appear in Halo 6, and how likely is that exactly, Chris? Well, let me get down to basics. If you already know who this character is in Halo lore, then just bear with me. Let's recap on who Mendicant Bias is. Well, he was the most advanced Foreigner AI at the time of its creation by the Foreigners, and was in charge of organizing Foreigner defenses against the Flood during the Ancient War. Bias eventually entered a 40-year-long conversation with the Gravemind at that time in hopes to discover vital flaws to help the Foreigners finally win, but it backfired. Eventually, the Gravemind persuaded the Ancilia through the techniques known as Logic Plague and corrupted the AI to betray his masters. The AI had joined the Flood, now believing that the Foreigners were arrogant and prideful, and denied the next step of evolution through the Flood's infection by clinging onto the mantle, the same mantle Cortana now believes in and is enforcing with the Guardians, but we'll get into that later. The AI was eventually defeated in combat by offensive Bias and faced trial, at which time he said, "I am penitent. I know that what I have done cannot be forgiven. I will accept my stasis with grace and await a time where I might redeem myself." In other words, he had finally become regretful, hoping that somehow, in some way, in the future, maybe far future, he could make up for what he had done wrong here, betraying the Foreigners, his creators. It would be kind of interesting to see Cortana make a similar statement when or if she is ever defeated too. Mendicant Bias was locked into eternal exile, entombed beneath a vast desert on the Ark, only kept from being destroyed because of his vast knowledge of the parasite of the Flood, in the event that they ever return. Spoiler alert, they do. A shard of Mendicant Bias's consciousness found itself onto High Charity, where the AI admitted that after 100,000 years of solitude, had still stuck with his realization that his betrayal of the Foreigners was a grave mistake. He had also shared his intentions to bring Reclaimers to the Ark. Two shards reunited on the Ark later and tried to make contact with John, that which we see through the terminals as a player in Halo 3. Bias can also be heard in Halo 2's soundtrack Milesium Suite played backwards. Check this out.
Seeking forgiveness.
During the firing of the Halo ring in Halo 3, Mendicant Bias had already found himself inside the Ark's systems. Perhaps Chief surviving and escaping the ring at the end of Halo 3 wasn't just luck, perhaps it was Bias's help, as well as his half just so coincidentally of the Forward Unto Dawn being split away from the Arbiter and not escaping the situation in space. Then he so happens to approach Requiem, and waking up the ancient foreigner known as your Didact may have not all been an accident. If so, that is crazy coincidence. Halo Mythos states Chief's side of the ship was, quote, mysteriously redirected by an outside force to point inside the distant Epolock system on a course that would bring it near Requiem. Is it possible that Mendicant Bias manipulated Master Chief's journey and his escape on the ring from the Ark, and just so happened manipulated the portal where Chief was stuck in space to just so happen to wake up the Didact after being redirected to Requiem? I don't know, you tell me. I've already talked about this next subject so much, so I'll go ahead and keep it brief. Master Chief effectively has the Didact Giyas, it would look like. Giyas are a coded set of subconscious orders and or beliefs programmed into genealogy that would eventually be passed on to people's children and their children and so on. In other words, it would seem that the Librarian had planned a lot of what Master Chief has done so far a very long time ago. The Didact had also interacted with Mendicant Bias before and had tried stopping him. Listen to this interesting portion in Halo 1 that has been overlooked by many Halo fans that may link all the Didact's ties to Mendicant Bias and make them a part of Chief's business as well.
More or less. Technically, this installation's pulse has a maximum effective radius of 25,000 light years. But once the others follow suit, this galaxy will be quite devoid of life, or at least any life with sufficient biomass to sustain the flood. But you already knew that. I mean, how couldn't you?
Left out that little detail, did he?
We have followed outbreak containment procedure to the letter. You were with me each step of the way as we managed this crisis.
Chief, I'm picking up movement.
Why would you hesitate to do what you've already done?
We need to go right now.
Last time you asked me, if it were my choice, would I do it? Having had considerable time to ponder your query, my answer has not changed. There is no choice. We must activate the ring.
Is this just a big stream of coincidences, or is there something more happening here? Had Mendicant Bias really planned for all this all along, or even a fragment of it? And why would he want to do this? What would he have to gain? Well, perhaps he would have atonement to gain. The ability to make things right with the Foreigners, his creators that he had betrayed so long ago in the name of the Flood. The terminals sure seem to suggest that Bias is seeking atonement through John 1:17. Perhaps how he intended to do this is to begin the reclamation. By the way, that is the ultimate consequence of the Halo series. Leading up through all the Halo games has led up to the beginning of the reclamation. And if you think about it, Master Chief is responsible for this said reclamation. If he wasn't lost in space, perfectly set on a course for a Foreigner shield world known as Requiem, awakening the Didact, an ancient Foreigner in Halo 4, and then Cortana put into the domain to begin the reclamation, then most of this would have not happened, at least from what we see in Halo 5. Bias perhaps made an error and actually intended Master Chief, John, to become the holder of the domain, the holder of the mantle of responsibility, and not Cortana, and that could have been his fatal mistake. One terminal in particular may shed some light on this theory as to why Mendicant Bias may have sent Chief to Requiem. He says, "And so here at the end of my life, I do once again betray a former master. The path ahead is fraught with peril, but I will do all that I can to keep it stable, keep you safe. I'm not foolish to think this will absolve me of my sins. One life hardly balances billions. But I would have my masters know that I have changed, and you shall be my example. Sounds like it makes a lot of sense with what we discussed earlier, right? Perhaps by betraying a former master, he is referring to the Ur-Dynect being awakened by Master Chief in Halo 4, and eventually killed by John. I literally have no other guess as to who Bias could be talking about, because as far as relevance goes, it seems that Bias may have something to do with Master Chief encountering the Ur-Dynect in Halo 4. By the looks of it, it appears that Bias is on Team Chief and wants to keep him safe. I believe Bias is still alive, even though he says it's at the end of his life before the Ark takes heavy damage from the firing of the ring. And mainly, until Halo Wars 2, we could have only guessed if the Ark was still even a thing and wasn't completely destroyed by the ring. That isn't the case, we know that now, and it's likely that this AI is still alive, somewhere in the systems. Without needing to say, I think it's a reasonable theory to make that Bias has been foreshadowed enough times that with all this information, that this AI may hold some relevance, hell, even a proper introduction and place in Halo 6's story. I recently crafted a rather large video breaking down why Cortana is affected by the logic plague and some new information basically confirming that this is the case, same as Mendicant Bias once was, but less so and much more subtle. The difference is Mendicant Bias has, at least apparently, recovered from the Gravemind's illusions and lies and is sorry about what he did. And now Mendicant Bias wishes to help the Reclaimers, to help John 1-7, and perhaps stop another AI from making his very same mistake. Well, almost, and that would be Cortana. Not only does Mendicant Bias have experience, but he also has incredible knowledge of fighting and destroying both the Foreigners, including Foreigner tech like the Guardians, and the Flood. He's also on the side of the humans by the looks of it now, the side of John 117, making him an ideal and very powerful ally in the war ahead in Halo 6 that may just involve Celia, Cortana, the Created, Foreigner Guardians, Foreigner Tech, and the devastating Flood and the Graveminds as well. So let's talk about the nitty gritty, the action. What will happen in Halo 6 when Cortana and Mendicant Bias meet? I think Cortana is certainly a very interesting character, and it would be so cool to see Mendicant Bias actually speak to her. First off, the dialogue would be out of this world. Mendicant Bias seems to be a very distressed, a very dark, grim, matured character, whereas Cortana may come off as a little bit naive, a little bit foolish, idealistic, and it would be so cool to see these two characters not just even fight, but just interact and talk to each other. It would be so cool to hear this heavy, deep, Celia ancient voice speak to this new naive Cortana, and I think that would be really badass, especially if he's on the side of the humans. Sorry, I just had to say all that. So cool to think about. It's hard to say for sure if Bias is a stable or trustworthy ally to the humans, to the galaxy itself, but it seems that way with the evidence provided. He seems like he's really sorry for what he did, and he's Team Chief, Team Reclaimer on this one. It would be particularly interesting to see Bias actually defeat Cortana and become the new keeper of the mantle and see what he would do then. Cortana so far though has shown great power and might using Foreigner resources to turn the galaxy against itself and persuading sub-colonies to join her side and EMPing colonies who refuse to surrender. Why I think it's likely Bias will return is because there isn't much else in the galaxy that could rival her besides the Flood at this point. The Flood would also be an interesting foe added into the mix after their confirmation of returning in Halo Wars 2 that they did indeed survive. Then Bias would, of course, be even more of help, helping John, helping humans, helping everybody eliminate not only Cortana, but the Flood, get Cortana out of power, and restore order to the galaxy. So for me, it's really hard to imagine how Bias fighting evil Cortana will play out in Halo 6, like the gameplay, the cutscenes, and basically the overall story and the dialogue would play out in the game. But I got a gut feeling that the Guardians are gonna reappear in Halo 6, and they're gonna be the key to Halo 6's plot too in all of this, just like they were in Halo 5. After all, Halo 5's subtitle was named Halo 5 Guardians. And funny enough, we barely know anything about these constructs. It's as if they weren't quite done telling the story of these Forerunner weapons of mass destruction. We have very little lore about these constructs, other than that they are directly controlled by the domain where, by the way, Cortana resides, and that they enforce a mantle of responsibility. I doubt even the Infinity could rival a single Guardian, as the evidence to that would be the Infinity retreating before it fired even one shot, although the Infinity was able to blast a pretty good hole in the Composer, so who knows, the Infinity may be able to take on a Guardian or two. Who knows? I believe Mendicant Bias will need to take control of some equal or something greater than the Guardian. Perhaps Bias will be able to somehow hack or forge himself into the domain, or some Forerunner tech, or another point of power that we just simply don't know about because it hasn't been put into the lore yet, and take control of a Guardian or something much more powerful, something much more ancient and maybe sinister, potentially a primordial ship or construct. Listen to what Lasky says here at the end of Halo 5, foreshadowing that they will need something to fight back against the Guardians. Not just the Infinity, not just the nuke, but something real, something tangible, perhaps.
We're in the clear, Captain.
Can she track us?
No reason to think she can't.
Continue random jumps. Steer clear of major settlements.
We're just gonna run?
Only until we could find a way to fight.
Lasky plans on fighting back, but first they need the means to a weapon, because the Infinity obviously isn't up for a confrontation with several 10, 20, 30 Guardians all at once, these powerful Forerunner constructs. In my opinion, I believe still Mendicant Bias does stand a chance against evil Cortana, although it seems that he lacks the means to physically defeat her forces or herself at the moment, but that might not always be the case. He has already faced the Flood and knows an incredible information about the Flood, their tactics, their strategies, and may be able to somehow manipulate the Gravemind and the Flood to actually taking down these Guardians, but somehow being able to defeat them as well. Mendicant Bias also knows a lot about the Forerunners and the same tech Cortana is now control of. He in fact has already came in contact with the domain before anyway, and Celius, like Mendicant Bias, already routinely accessed information within the domain, and AIs such as Bias were already connected to the domain routinely, in Forerunner days of course. He is more than likely still alive in the ARC's systems, and with that, he could be granted enough power, or at least enough to get Cortana's attention to stand a chance. Fight fire with fire, right? Well, the only thing that could stop the Guardians are maybe the Guardians themselves. Just as Bias, a very powerful AI in Celia, may be the only thing that could stand a chance to a very powerful AI in Celia, that being Cortana, considering she is just as digital and artificial as he is. Bias's best chance may be entering the domain and turning her own forces against her, as well as recruiting help from other Forerunner AI who disagree with Cortana's actions. Some suggest that this teaser here, due to some changes in story development, which by the way would explain why Halo 5 was so different than its marketing, was not a glimpse of Halo 5, but actually a teaser of Halo 6's plot, of its timeline, with Chief on the Ark retrieving not a Guardian, but the ancient in Celia known as Mendicant Bias, cloaking himself from Cortana's eyes and ears. By the way, it's very possible that Cortana has a couple Guardians set out to look just for Master Chief It seems that Master Chief is the only person Cortana still has an emotional connection to, and probably wants to be kept safe while she conducts her mantle of responsibility business across the galaxy so Chief can't be harmed during the midst of it. If she's interested in the rings, as which we can see at the end of Halo 5 and during Halo Wars 2's ending, we can see very clearly that she is collecting the rings, potentially to fire them and wipe out all living creatures so that she can reseed them and bring everybody back to the Stone Age. Very big possibility. The Ark is also an important, if not the most important location in all of Halo. It's where the Banished, the Flood, the Forerunners, the Spirit of Fire, and many other key elements in the series are at. And it's all going down at the Ark, including where Mendicant Bias is, deep within the systems of the structured construct known as the Ark. It's all very possible, and it could take place here. So what is the big conclusion here, Chris? What are you getting on about? Well, I'm sure you guys have some conclusions of yourselves, some thoughts, some theories based around what we've talked about today, or maybe not, and I would love to hear it down in the comment section below. But I think Mendicant Bias appearing in Halo 6 is possible. Maybe not very likely, but still very possible. Foreigner tech greatly outweighs human tech, right? And since evil Cortana is in the domain and controlling all Foreigner tech like the Guardians, including the Halo rings as well, it would appear, humans will need to look for better tech further than just nukes and big ships like the Infinity. They need something better, they need something smarter, and be more creative. I am confident when I say not many things could take on the Guardians in the Halo galaxy. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. Unless it's another Guardian, same thing with Cortana and her position, there's not much to rival Cortana or her Guardians. The only thing that could feasibly take on Cortana is another AI, a smarter AI, or Forerunners themselves getting involved, which, mind you, is probably more possible than Mendicant Bias showing up. But I think his arrival, his intellect, his creativity, his power, his energy, going toe-to-toe with Cortana would be nothing short of fucking gold to fans like me that eagerly await for these Easter eggs as old as Halo 2 to finally pay off in an epic big way. Okay, so we have talked about a lot today. Guys, I want to hear what you think or feel about Mendicant Bias being in Halo 6. What do you think about what we have talked about today? Did any of these things spark a thought in your mind? I want to hear it down in the comment section below. Do you think Mendicant Bias will even appear in Halo 6? Why or why not? How or how not? What other theories do you have about all this? Please let me know. I want to hear it down in the comment section below. And guys, of course, that is one of the things you can do to enter in to win the Astro A50 Master Chief wireless headset for Xbox One and PC. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell notification, and I will see you guys in the next one. I had a lot of fun making this. Let me know if you want more like these. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.